Good morning, Your Excellency.
Hi, good morning, Monica. Can you hear me?
We can hear you clearly. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Yes. Yeah, it's nice to see you.
Good
Actually,
to
what's
see
the
you.
situation? So is PKM Center open and also operating?
We are operating, but we are mostly in home office. We have a rotation of only 3 people being in the office premises at one time. They are in separate rooms and of course need to be tested regularly. But we are doing fine. Everyone is healthy and everyone feels safe like this. So it's okay.
Nice.
How are you?
Actually, our embassy is also trying to do our business, the essential business as usual, but taking the particular caution under these circumstances caused by the Omicron.
Right.
Yeah, it's very actually tricky and also unexpected. Yeah, turn of development. So yeah, we all have to exercise utmost caution and also the care for everything.
Very true.
Yeah, actually COVID. Good morning, Your Excellency.
Hello.
Dr. Fisher. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
So how's
Hello.
everything, Mr. President?
Thank you. Lucky that we are healthy. I'm in the office at the moment, and
yes.
Things are going smooth in an extraordinary situation.
Yes, indeed. Monica and I were talking about that. This ominous Omicron.
Yeah. The Greek alphabet has many letters: alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mi, ni, omicron, pi, rho, sigma, tau, etc. It's a long alphabet.
Yeah, under the challenging circumstances, I wish you and Madame and also all the staff of the center are well, healthy and well. And
that's
safe.
Very kind. Thank you very much. And the same to you, of course.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.
Your Excellencies, we will start in 1 minute.
Yeah.
And I guess we will be switched to the public. And maybe if Marie-Therese Zöni and Renate Christ also already want to switch on, they are our panelists today. So again, another cordially welcome to them. And
may I just ask you one thing? Please don't call me Christ.
Okay, sorry, Christ. Ich werde mich bemühen, auf Deutsch immer wieder zu switchen. Vielen Dank.
Klingt nach Weihnachten.
Very true. We don't yet have our third speaker online, Dr. Han Yong-Hee, but I'm hoping that he will soon be online with us as well. Good. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to all of you to our today's Beyond COP26 Toward a Green Economy Climate Symposium. It is a virtual one, given the circumstances, and we are very thankful for you to have an interest to listen to what our experts who we have gathered here today will have to say to you. We are starting with opening remarks, thanks to our partners of the Permanent Mission of the Republic of Korea and the Ban Ki-moon Center. This virtual symposium came into being. And so it is my utmost pleasure as CEO of the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens, my name is Monica Fröhler, to be your moderator for today, but to give the floor immediately to you, dear Ambassador Shin Chae-hoon, for your opening remarks. Thank you very much for the collaboration with the Permanent Mission of the Republic of Korea that made this event today possible. So, Your Excellency, the floor is yours. Your Excellency, you're still muted. You need to unmute, I think.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first Virtual Climate Symposium. Let me first offer my special thanks to Dr. Heinz Fisher co-chair of the Ban Ki-moon Center, for honoring us with his presence today. I also thank Monica Freila, CEO of BKM Center, and her team for having worked with us to co-organize this event. My deep thanks also goes to distinguished panelists for their contributions. Ladies and gentlemen, this year marks the start of the new climate regime under the Paris Agreement. At this critical juncture, it is my pleasure to host this event with the Ban Ki-moon Center, a leading organization in the area of climate change. Since its foundation in 2017, the BKM Center has increased public awareness and global cooperation on this issue, especially by focusing on youth education and women's empowerment. For our part, the Republic of Korea is working hard to work together with the international community to achieve carbon neutrality and sustainable green growth. Taking this opportunity, I'd like to introduce Korea's major efforts to combat climate change. First, as President Moon Jae-in announced at the World Leaders Summit at COP26, or known as 26th UN Climate Change Conference, earlier this November, Korea will reduce greenhouse gas emissions by more than 40% from 2018 levels by 2030. In addition, Korea will join the global effort to reduce coal use by putting a complete end to coal-fired power plants by 2050. Korea will also support developing countries' transition to a low-carbon economy, including the development of renewable energy, following the suspension of public financing for new overseas coal-fired power plants this April. Secondly, Korea is actively promoting the Green New Deal with a view to achieving a low-carbon and sustainable economy by investing in green infrastructure, renewable energy, and green industry. In pursuit of this initiative, the Korean government is paying special attention to the potential of hydrogen economy and is expanding investment in this area in accordance with its Hydrogen Economy Roadmap and Hydrogen Act. Thirdly, Korea would like to facilitate international cooperation while playing a bridging role between developing and developed countries. This year in May, Korea hosted the second P4G summit, also known as Partnering for Green Growth and Global Goals 2030 Summit, where world leaders united their resolve to achieve carbon neutrality and an inclusive green recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. Based on the achievement of this summit, Korea will continue its efforts to bring the international community closer together to strengthen climate action. Ladies and gentlemen, before I conclude my remarks, I'd like to commend the two co-chairs of the BKM Center for their leadership in the field of climate change, among their many accomplishments in other areas too. Dr. Ban Ki-moon led the successful adoption of the Paris Agreement in 2015 as the UN Secretary General. Currently, as President and Chair of the GGGI, or also known as Global Green Growth Institute, he continues his active leadership role in the field of climate change. Dr. Heinz Fisher, as the co-chair of the BKM Center, has been a strong supporter of climate-related issues and contributed to advancing the international community's awareness of this issue. With the benefit of their wisdom and insight, I'm confident that today's symposium will be a meaningful opportunity to share our ideas and move toward the green future. We look forward to your invaluable participation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your very informative opening remarks. It is my real pleasure to now introduce to you a video message by former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who is the co-chairman of the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens, and who, as you know, is of course the champion par excellence for the Paris Climate Agreement. He has been the father of the agreement in 2015, and we are looking forward to listen to his opening remarks by video message.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Shin Jae-hyun of the Republic of Korea, Honorable President Dr. Heinz Fisher, dear ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored today to address you as co-chair of the Ban Ki-moon Center and welcome you to the virtual climate symposium co-hosted with the permanent mission of the Republic of Korea to the international organizations in Vienna. 6 years ago, the world reached a consensus of a net zero goal by 2050 and adopted the Paris Climate Change Agreement, which commits to keeping global warming well below 2 degrees Celsius and to pursue efforts to set the limit to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The latest UNFCCC Nationally Determined Contributions NDC synthesis report published in 2021 shows the implementation is progressing as 70 parties are set to reduce greenhouse gas emissions on average by 26% until 2030. Earlier this month, the world was looking at Glasgow as big promises were being made, but as we move beyond the COP26, looking at the current targets of the world seems to be on a trajectory for a dangerous 2.4 Celsius temperature increase. That is why the goal of today's event, beyond the COP26, moving towards a green economy, is a very important one. It will create an open dialogue and mutually exchange opportunities, best practices, and challenges of climate action in the Republic of Korea and the Republic of Austria. South Korea's COP26 pledge to upgrade its NDC targets and reducing greenhouse gas emissions by at least 40% until 2030 is an important step towards achieving the targets laid out in Paris. However, we must push the limits and go further in finding innovative ways that will allow us to decarbonize our economy and contribute to a greener future. I have been observing, especially in the private sector, both in Korea and Austria, a rise in green tech solutions and renewable energy innovations, and the trend around the green hydrogen-based projects in helping the world reach a net zero future. Green hydrogen is increasingly viewed as a potential alternative that can address issues related to the environment, energy security, and economic growth. Republic of Korea's Hydrogen Economy Roadmap, announced in January 2019, will play a vital role in transitioning to a green and hydrogen-based economy and to achieve its net zero target. Similarly, green hydrogen could constitute a major opportunity for expanding and renewing Austria's energy system and provide the necessary drive to reach carbon neutrality by 2040. The transition to move towards a green economy is not and should not be perceived as a challenge, but rather an excellent opportunity. Only by empowering united action can we achieve a greener and more resilient future. I wish you great success for today's discussion. Thank you. 감사합니다. Dankeschön.
Thank you, former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, for your remarks. It is now my privilege to introduce to you the second co-chair of the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens, Dr. Heinz Fisher, who was the 11th President of the Republic of Austria and has been very much a supporter of the Paris Climate Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals ever since they exist. Dr. Heinz Fisher, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Monica. Your Excellency, Ambassador Shin Jae-hyun, my dear friend, Secretary General of the United Nations, former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to thank Ban Ki-moon and Ambassador Shin Jae-hyun for their contributions. We are all good friends, we cooperate together, and we want to contribute to this event. Today's virtual climate symposium, organized by the Ban Ki-moon Center, together with the permanent mission of the Republic of Korea to the international organizations in Vienna, is a contribution towards turning promises into action after COP26. High expectations were put on the 26th annual conference on climate, and rightly so. While the international community is still struggling to fight the pandemic, weather conditions are becoming increasingly volatile and millions of lives are being altered by our changing climate. The disastrous effect on people and the whole planet are mostly felt by marginalized communities who contributed least to the global greenhouse gas emissions. The Paris Climate Agreement, under the great leadership of Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, is considered a landmark international accord to accelerate action towards a sustainable, renewable, and just world for all. While the final commitments and announcements of the COP26 decision statement stayed rather moderate, it is now more important than ever to monitor countries' nationally determined contributions and global leaders' financial commitments. We are going in the right direction by increasing emphasis on climate adaptation and indigenous rights. But we need accountability to truly keep global warming within and below 1.5 degrees Celsius. A just transition to clean energy, rapid phase out of coal, and end to international fossil fuel finance must be at the heart of climate action. The Austrian European Union presidency in 2018 saw the creation and signing of the Hydrogen Initiative and kicked off with a strategy development event in Vienna in 2019. The European Green Deal is also a stepping stone in the right direction. The 27 member states pledged to reduce net greenhouse gas emissions by at least 55% in the year 2030 and to become the world's first climate neutral continent by 2050. But we still have a long way to go. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, climate change is not only the melting ice and the suffering polar bears. Climate change has tremendous consequences on people and affects many, many human rights, like access to health, food, or clean water, etc. Our changing climate will have more and more impact on peace, stability, and prosperity, and should therefore be considered a threat to international security. In addition to a carbon-free world run by renewable energy, we need to equally promote and implement human rights and equity and start using a human-centered approach to the climate change. As Mary Robinson, the former president of Ireland, once said, very true, I quote, "A focus on rights can inform and strengthen our response and maximize the effectiveness of our local, national, and international climate actions." End of quotation. With this in mind, let's join efforts in building a green, inclusive, and fair economy decoupled from greenhouse gas emissions. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish the symposium fruitful discussions. I thank you for your engagement and for your work in this direction against climate change. And I thank you very much for your attention. Good luck.
Thank you, President Fisher. Much needed words of reminding us of what is at stake. Thanks a lot for your welcoming remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, you tuned into Beyond COP26, the way to a new green economy. And obviously, many of us have been at COP. Some of you might have followed it online or in the media. And we thought it makes sense that after a welcoming statement segment, that we are summarizing the major points that have been witnessed at COP. Now, the one perspective that we want to give you is the unique one of the Ban Ki-moon said. And so we invited our Chief Operating Officer, who has been at COP26, Catherine Harvey. She has been there for 2 weeks and obviously did loads of bilateral meetings, observed closely what the various countries, but also NGO stakeholders brought forward. And we are happy to invite her for a short recap on COP26. Where do we stand? Is it promising? Is it not promising enough? So Catherine Harvey, over to you before I introduce the panel speakers.
Thank you very much, Monica, and thank you very much for having me. It's a great honor to be part of this conversation. As you said, Monica, I was at the COP for 2 full weeks. It was my 6th COP, and so I went in with a little bit lower expectations than the world probably in general, because there was hopes were high, but we did know that we would miss larger representation from, for example, China, Brazil, Russia, Australia wasn't there very obviously as well. There was some headway when we saw the very ambitious NDC of India, which brought our projections of the global warming increase down to 2.4% from the 2.7 that it was in the summer. There was a deal signed by South Africa, who was now able to finance the end of coal in the next 20 years in their country. We had Nigeria committing to cutting emissions to net zero by 2060. And of course, something that was really great to see after personally being in Marrakesh when President Trump was elected at the climate conference, when we were mostly in tears about that outcome, was that the very strong presence of the US, including President Biden, but also Special Envoy Kerry was there almost for the entire duration of the conference, and we had senators and so forth. Unfortunately, they came with political commitments and with a commitment together with China, but not with a lot of money in their pockets. So we will see how much of the commitments that were made on a political level will be backed up by financing from the US. As you know, the Paris Climate Agreement was aiming at a global increase to maximum of well below 2 degrees Celsius, even closer to 1.5 degrees. So we're very, very far away from that still. There were some achievements. So in the first week, we saw a commitment to ending deforestation by 2030. There was a global methane pledge, which was quite good to see. We had additional pledges on financing clean energy access. The banking sector committed to net zero financing in their investments. There was a commitment to ending overseas fossil fuel funding. We had actually 40 countries committing to phasing out fossil fuels, which included the Republic of Korea and the EU. There was a doubling commitment towards adaptation funding. We saw first steps in recognizing the fact that countries were already experiencing loss and damage, and that we need to do something about that. There was some increase in support towards the most vulnerable constituents, including a very prominent pavilion for indigenous peoples representation. There was a lot more talk about agriculture. We've seen a huge pledge of up to, I think, almost $1 billion towards smallholder farmers, which was very good to see. And we did see a lot more private sector on board. Although, you know, as always with the private sector, we have to be a little bit careful and see it with a pinch of salt, because there's also always danger of greenwashing when it comes to private sector commitments. Now, why did we still feel like this was not maybe not calling it a failure, but definitely not a success? First of all, of course, we did not hit the target at all when it comes to 2 degrees or less. There was no actual end to fossil fuels. We completely missed still the 100 billion annual commitment of climate financing. So that was still missed, and we still have a long while to go to get to that point. We're nowhere close to have a 50-50 split between financing between adaptation and mitigation. We have a doubling of adaptation funding, but considering that it's still so low, we're not even close to the 50-50 split. There is, although we recognize loss and damage, no funding mechanism towards yet, although we did have a small commitment from the government of Scotland to financing loss and damage. All in all, at the conference, we realized, and we noticed very closely as well, that was a terrible gender balance. The inclusion of activists wasn't great, and we did have a bit of lip service towards just transition, and we did have a gender day at the conference, but still there's a way to go to really include the diverse voices of the world. So the reality is that we have a Glasgow Climate Pact, but again, as many of these things, that relies on the goodwill and voluntary commitments of governments and stakeholders. And so if we do achieve them, and so this is the outcome, the ones that we committed at the Glasgow Climate Pact, we will be able to reduce 6.3 billion tons of CO2 equivalent emissions by 2030, which sounds huge, 6.3 billion. But considering that to get to the goals that we set, like the 1.5 degree target, we need to reduce 26.8 billion tons. We're not very far advanced yet. So there's still a long way to go. We've been talking about climate change for a very, very long time. Since the 1950s, global warming was a thing. We talked about climate change in the 1970s and 80s. We had the 26th, which means the 26 years of conferences on climate change. So we've been spending years on this topic. And to quote actually the special envoy for climate change of the Maldives, Ms. Sabra Nordin, by the way, one of the few women I saw on the plenary stage at the COP, she says we have less than 100 months to go before the Maldives, the entire country, is underwater. So after so many years of talking about climate change and global warming, we're now down to months when we calculate of what we need to do. So with that rather sober report back from the COP26, I hand over to Monica and the distinguished panel to see what actual actions we can take to really do better.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for this very concise report of so many results that, as you pointed out, are probably not as successful as we needed at this stage. I am very, very honored to welcome with us today 3 incredible, knowledgeable resource people who are our panelists for the discussions to come. Dr. Renate Christ, Dr. Han Yong-Hee, and Marie-Therese Töni. Dr. Renate Christ is a trained biologist and has been with the UN organizations for 20 years, focusing on climate change and sustainable development. From 2004 until her retirement in 2015, she held a position as the secretary of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. You will all know the IPCC. Earlier, she worked for the Austrian Ministry of Environment and the European Commission and several universities. Secondly, I would like to introduce to you the Korean representative today at the panel, Dr. Han Yong-Hee. He is a professor at the School of Energy Technology at the Korea Institute of Energy Technology, which some of you might know as KENTEC. He also serves as director of KENTEC Institute for Hydrogen Energy and has worked on hydrogen and fuel cell related research and development for more than 20 years. He participated in the preparation of several government-driven energy plans, such as the 4th Plan for Energy Technology Development, Clean Energy Technology Roadmap, Mission Innovations, and the Hydrogen Economy Roadmap, the National Hydrogen Technology Roadmap. So he's really an expert on the subject of hydrogen and how to put it into governmental policy. Han received his PhD from the University of Cincinnati, the Department of Chemical Engineering. And ladies and gentlemen, last but not least, our third panelist for today is Marie-Therese Töni. She is the Director for Renewable Energy at the Federal Ministry for Climate Action, Environment, Energy and Mobility, Innovation and Technology in Austria. She holds a master's degree in Environmental and Resource Management from the University of Natural Resources and Life Sciences in Vienna. Some of you might know that as BOKU. And in addition, she completed an MBA at the Vienna University of Technology and the Baruch College in New York. Over the last decade, Ms. Töni worked in an engineering office at the Association of the Austrian Electricity Companies, as well as in the cabinet of the Federal Minister for Environment. So, dear panelists, welcome to our virtual climate symposium. And I do want to start with getting your statements of central concern. So I will give the floor to each and every one of you, one after the other. And I would like to know from your particular vantage point, you are experts in your respective fields. What can we do to actually move to a green economy beyond COP26? And of course, Renate Christ, I will start with you. We are particularly interested in what is scientifically necessary now. What is your assessment of COP26? Please, over to you.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm indeed very, very pleased that I have been invited by the Ban Ki-moon Center to give a little, to participate as a panelist, because I remember when I worked for the IPCC, we were very honored and privileged that UN Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, participated even in several of our events. And he always emphasized the role of science, and he urged governments to listen to science. And that's why I would like to start with 3 important messages from science. Number 1, there is a near linear relationship between carbon dioxide emissions and the increase of global temperature, which means every ton of emitted CO2, regardless when and regardless where it is emitted, adds to global warming. And this means there's a limited budget for each and every temperature goal. Number 2, to stabilize the global temperature, carbon dioxide emissions have to reach net zero. As long as the emissions continue to increase, also the temperature will increase. So these 2 key findings have to be seen in context: net zero and the limited budgets. That means it's also very important how we reach the net zero, whether we increase, peak and decline, or whether we just approach already right now to go to zero. And the third message is limiting warming to 1.5 degrees as compared to 2 degrees considerably reduces the risks. And this last point was really emphasized in the Glasgow conference, and the president of the conference had, I think his personal target was keep 1.5 degrees within reach. And what I am pleased is that this is really enshrined very prominently in the Glasgow Pact, and also supported by clear statements which are derived from IPCC models. So the reduction by -45% by 2030 relative to 2010 level, and reaching net zero CO2 emissions around mid-century, and requesting deep reductions of other greenhouse gases. So that's really a statement based on science. However, and that's also in the Glasgow Pact, when we are considering even the updated national determined contributions, in 2030, the global emissions will not be -45%, but rather approximately 13% above 2010 levels. So that shows there is still a lot of work to be done I mean, we see some progress. The nationally determined contributions submitted after Paris would have led to an increase in temperature of 3.2 degrees. The revised ones, which were submitted by July this year, had already a reduction towards an increase in temperature of 2.7 degrees. And as was said by Mrs. Harvey, currently we are at around 2.4 degrees, provided that all the promises are really implemented. So that's also, I mean, we can have the best agreement, can have the best pledges, but they have to be put in action. What I think is a progress, long-awaited progress, is that the Paris rulebook is completed, that we have rules for international emissions trading. They could have been a little bit better, but I think there are sound bases. But where, in my view, Glasgow really did not meet the expectations is how to address and compensate for, and I deliberately use this word, for loss and damage, which is already occurring and will occur in vulnerable countries, regardless of how strong mitigation measures will be. This is a task for the next COP, and I think we must not treat this as charity. It is really a responsibility, because after all, developed countries through past emissions have contributed major part to global warming up to now. And then disappointing is also, we have heard already from a previous speaker, the commitments or the calls for removing fossil fuel subsidies and the disappointing outcomes in terms of financing. But just let me at the end show you the dimensions. We are calling for 100 billion per year to mobilize funds for meaningful mitigation in developing countries. And at the same time, globally, there are almost 500 billion US dollars spent on fossil fuel subsidies. So the money is there, it's just spent in the wrong way. And well, I leave it with that for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you, Renate Christ, for this quite sobering assessment, actually. Allow me to turn the floor to our next speaker and panelist, Dr. Han Yong-Hee, to introduce his vantage point that he brings to the discussion, particularly probably focusing on the hydrogen solution that Korea is very much already investigating in. And we would like to see a brief and easy introduction to the hydrogen economy, because several of us might not be experts as you are, but also what is the importance in achieving carbon neutrality towards hydrogen? Like, how does it fit the overall puzzle? Please, Dr. Han Yong-Hee.
Thank you very much. It is a great honor to have a part of this symposium. And my name is Jong Hyun from Caltech. The hydrogen energy is a really important part of the carbon neutrality. Actually, carbon neutrality can be achieved by I'm sorry. It is we have to achieve the carbon neutrality by the renewable energy mostly. Actually, it is because the most part of the carbon dioxide emission comes from the energy part. So it is solved by the energy resources by the renewable resources, but unfortunately, technically, renewable energy, we can use renewable energy when we need it or where we need. So we need to store the energy in some way. So hydrogen is important hydrogen plays important role in that sense. Actually, from the renewable energy, we can produce hydrogen and store it, and then whenever we want, wherever we want, we can produce electricity. So in that structure, we can contribute, hydrogen can contribute the replacement of the fossil fuel by the renewable energy. But in the same time, we can use hydrogen as an resources for the industry and heat resources, and actually, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit nervous on this. Okay. Actually, hydrogen can be used for the heat resources and some for the many industry like chemical and steel making and so on. So the country like Korea, we have very our industry consists of very energy consuming structure. So we actually, I'm very sorry about it. Actually, hydrogen can be used for the resources for the heat in industry also. So importance of hydrogen is getting larger, and for the climate crisis. Actually, Korean government put a lot of investment on the hydrogen, and then the government announced the target and roadmap for the hydrogen and hydrogen economy. Actually, Korea has due to the lot of investment, Korean industry like fuel cell vehicle or power generation field, we have many technology. So the government achieved a lot of achievement. We have more than 15,000 fuel cell vehicle and 650 megawatts power generation by hydrogen and fuel cell. But still, it is not enough to solve the crisis of climate change. The importance of the hydrogen, the technology, to achieve the hydrogen economy and to solve the problem of climate change, we need the important factor is to develop technologies in very similar speed. Actually, we need to develop the technology of renewable energy, and then also we need to have the technology for the hydrogen production from the renewable energy, and we also develop the technology for hydrogen storage and delivery technology, and we also need the technology for the application, the utilization of hydrogen resources. Actually, and also every technology have to connect together. That's why we need, only in that case we need the complete. It is complete of the hydrogen energy. But the problem we have, actually each stage we have a technology. We have renewable hydrogen production, storage technology, and utilization technology in some certain stand. But the problem is it is not economical now. Actually, the R&D in this field, we try to reduce down cost, and then we, many technology are developed to reduce down the cost of the hydrogen energy. But it is not enough yet. So actually, we have to invest a lot of investment resources to the technology development, as well as we have to pay more on in the solution of this the hydrogen energy. But actually, I mean is the cost of the hydrogen energy will be, the technology make the cost of the hydrogen energy, we reduce the cost of the hydrogen energy. In the same time, we have to sacrifice some ourselves. That means we have to pay more money, more resources to solve this problem. We have to pay more, and then we will finally get the stage to solve the problem of this problem. So
thank you, Dr. Han. I do sense
it is not enough to actually achieve, transfer my idea to you. I'm sorry for my English. I'm very sorry for that, actually.
Thank you so much. I think we got the main ideas that the cost is reducing, but not fast enough, and there will be much more investment and research probably needed to make it economically feasible to scale with hydrogen solutions. But it's interesting to get a glimpse into what Korea has done. Our third panelist today is Marie-Thérèse Töni, and as you know, she is working for climate and for the position of Austria for years already in the meantime. And my question to you, Marie-Thérèse Töni, is what is Austria currently doing? What does the outcome of COP26 mean for Austria's efforts in renewable energy? Over to you.
Yeah, good morning, and thank you very much for the invitation. I believe the outcome of the COP26 actually highlights the importance of renewable energies playing in the future, because for the first time, we have not only the goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees that was anchored in the final declaration, but also both the coal phase out as well as the inefficient subsidies for fossil fuels appear in the final declaration. This is very good and is very welcome by Austria. But Austria has already entirely phased out coal for power production last year, so in 2020. And as Ms. Harvey already mentioned, one also has to state that the final declaration does not have the ambition it would have needed in the fight against the climate crisis. Austria has a very ambitious target in order to reduce our emissions and enhance the deployment of renewable energy. Austria's target is to reach net zero emission by 2040. And we're currently working on a number of policies and measures to get there. These include a new climate ticket for public transportation, subsidies for electric cars and for replacing fossil fuel-based heating system with renewables. And we have a new Renewable Energy Expansion Act with the aim at meeting 100% of our electricity needs from renewable sources by 2030. So we're going to invest a total of 1 billion euros annually in the expansion of renewables, mainly in PV and wind power by 2030 via market premiums and investment grants. And besides the promotion of green electricity, the expansion of green district heating, as well as the expansion of renewable hydrogen and green gas is also supported by the new law. And we believe this law is a central engine for jobs and the green economy. It will trigger investments in Austria and at the same time save around 10 million tons of CO2. Yeah, that's so far our renewable energy efforts in Austria. Thank you.
Thank you. Fascinating to hear these numbers again compiled. I would encourage the audience, we are still at 44 participants, to post questions to our panelists already, because we can get into the depth of the matter easily, also with the help of your questions. But of course, I would like to follow up. What we have heard now, where representatives from Korea and from Austria talking about renewable energy solutions and with a focus on hydrogen energy. And hence, Dr. Renate Christ, what is your assessment? Like, there are many solutions out there. And having heard these inputs of the experts, what do you consider to be the importance of technology in the solution finding for climate action? Maybe you also want to say something about hydrogen, but what else do we have to do in the fight against climate change on the way towards the green economy that we have been speaking about?
Well, let me start with hydrogen. As was explained by the speaker earlier, of course, hydrogen offers ways to decarbonize what we call the difficult to abate sectors, difficult to decarbonize, like chemicals, iron and steel, maybe also long-haul transport. So there is a role for hydrogen. Hydrogen is also a prime choice for storing energy. So it's not an energy source, it's an energy carrier. And as was explained, for instance, storing in particular from the volatile production from renewable energy sources. But we also have to face the facts that currently hydrogen is almost entirely supplied from natural gas and from coal. So hydrogen really will only play a role when we are able to provide enough renewable energy to then also produce the hydrogen. So hydrogen, green hydrogen, is a very limited source right now. And I think it is very important to also do a kind of a stock taking to say how much hydrogen we expect in the context of the development of the renewable energy and for which applications then the hydrogen we produce would be applied, like steel, chemical industry, and how much would we really have available, for instance, for transport. So I think there needs to be a transparent and honest assessment of what is necessary. But of course, I mean, the more we have renewable energy, the more hydrogen will play a role, and we have to be prepared for that. But I would still want to focus on all the other tools we have towards a green economy. like put the price on carbon. Austria has taken a first step, but I think it's a bit too timid and a bit too weak. Then certainly decarbonize the energy sector. Mrs. Töni has already explained all the steps which are planned in Austria. Certainly decide on clear end dates for the purchase and application of fossil fuel driven vehicles for heating and cooling systems. I think it's not clear enough yet, and people have to know there is an end to it, not only to the purchase, but also to the operation. And if you still want to continue to operate it, you have to expect a huge increase in price. I think that has to be transparent. And also for Austria, transport and urban sprawl and land use, that's a big problem. So having now we have a good basis with the climate ticket, but have a concept for mobility services where public transport is really provided to the last valley, to the I mean, really having options also for the last mile, and only then discuss private vehicles and whether they should be powered by e-cars or how long combustion engines would still be available. So I think you have to provide the low carbon or no carbon services before one can start kind of talking about regulations. And then for me that's so important also to have to get the people, the population, to get them on board and not having conflicts and demonstrations and people left behind. And then, so that gets me to what I think is very important, to enhance the awareness of consumers. In Austria, we have still like this offset and tiny little measures and steps to limit and I mean limits the growth in emissions, but this zero is zero, as I have explained earlier. I think that has to be communicated in a transparent and open manner. And then about money, I think it's, the 1 billion per year was mentioned earlier, but let's look at how many billions even in Austria are spent on COVID recovery. And this money has to be consistently spent in a way to enable and to foster the transition towards zero carbon and green economy. And I think that's one of the key measures I want to call upon the Austrian government also to not waste money getting into the wrong direction, and then we have to kind of redirect the whole thing again. So not put money into stranded investments.
Thanks so much. There was so much content. I would wish to follow up on 5 points, but allow me to follow up on one, which is very tangible and a tricky one. Putting a price on carbon. Austrian efforts are a start. There is Sweden that has a far higher price on carbon already. There is an EU consensus on putting a price on carbon. What is the right formula for it? Like, what should the price on carbon be, in your opinion?
Well, I'm not an economist, but certainly the €30 per ton for Austria is far too low. We have neighboring countries where the price is twice as much. We have economists who say, well, a serious effect can only be achieved by a price above $100. So, yeah. I think what is important is to start with a reasonable level and to have a foreseeable increase. And certainly we need also innovative financial instruments to allow for the decarbonization of, let's say, low-income households. I mean, people who cannot afford to change now the complete heating system. So here, I think right now the subsidy structure is well, not focused enough, because there are certain people for whom the little subsidy of 1,000 or 2,000 euros, when you have investments which are 10 times enough, I mean, it's a nice goodie, but there are others who just cannot afford it. And there we need creative financial instruments which then allow for them to decarbonize without having a very heavy load. And I think they are also, people who design the financial instruments and incentives have to be a little bit more proactive and creative.
Thank you so much, Renate Christ. For me, this is the perfect segue of going back to Marie-Therese Töni, because we're in the Austrian bubble. And I would like to get your opinion on how do you see the technological pathways of the Austrian government, maybe including hydrogen that you mentioned is part of the overall, but also how do you currently envision to combat climate change? What is the most necessary? Probably you elaborate a bit more on what you have already stated and comment on your fellow panelists, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I also like to refer to Ms. Christ, to the points she mentioned. In terms of concrete measures and finance, I would like to give a few examples. And we think a milestone for transport was the introduction of the climate ticket that had started on our National Day, the 26th of October this year. The goal is to provide a climate-friendly and inexpensive alternative to individual motorized transport. The climate ticket is a flat rate, one-year ticket for all means of public transportation in Austria, so by rail, bus, tram, metro, and customers can travel only for 3 euros a day all over Austria. So using public transport is now more convenient than ever before, and the entry barriers are lowered because customers do not need to buy several tickets for one trip. Then another measure you have already mentioned, the price on the socio-ecological tax. Austria recently got the socio-ecological tax reform off the ground. We will start with the ton of climate damaging CO2 will have a price of, you mentioned it already, 30 euros next year. And then it will rise up annually up to 55 in 2025. I think it's a good starting point to introduce the mechanism. Maybe the price is too low, but I think it's good that we start the system right now. Referring to the hydrogen statement, referring to Dr. Yong-Hee and also to Dr. Christ, I'd like to underline the comment from Ms. Christ that it's important to put the clear emphasis on renewable hydrogen. So hydrogen produced by electrolysis powered by renewable energy or by gasification processes based on biomass. And for the hydrogen, we will need a lot of renewable energy. And for this, we have the Renewable Energy Expansion Act in place since last summer, I mentioned before. But the thing is, we have to elevate the current renewable electricity production by 50% within the next 10 years. And thus, there is not only a technological pathway, but also we have to raise acceptance within the population for the renewables, especially for the installation of solar and wind power. And we would like to reach this by establishing energy communities. Energy communities are an association of several people, companies, or public bodies that jointly generate energy from renewable sources. And the self-generated energy can later be used, stored, or sold. And to boost these energy communities, they are granted several incentives, such as reduced grid usage charge, the elimination of the renewable subsidy contribution, and the exemption from the electricity tax. And we have also installed a coordination office in order to help these communities to make a contract. So in summary, energy communities will make we hope that they will make a significant contribution to promoting decentralized supply and allowing citizens to participate more strongly and directly in the energy transition.
It is interesting. Thank you very much that you have mentioned the energy communities, and I will come back to that, but I want to hear from Dr. Han first, because there is a question already from the audience regarding these communities. We will come back to that. Dr. Han, I would be keen to know the Korean way of dealing with hydrogen. It has a great prominence in your society already. Hydrogen, green hydrogen, is seen as a stepping stone to the solution. But can we achieve the technological advancement that you have spoken about in time? Because you too said we are not yet market ready, like it's not yet there that we can go broad and scale. So we still need to research. Now, we do have a limited carbon budget. We have heard from Catherine Harvey, Mauritius says we have 100 months. So can hydrogen and the technology as it's currently developed, can it really win this race? And surely it's not the only one silver bullet, but can it contribute so much that it is worthwhile to invest? Question to you, Dr. Han, what is your take on that? Can we be fast enough?
Actually, it is not fast enough to to solve this crisis. Actually, the problem is, as I said before, it is not economical. Actually, we cannot compete with the conventional technology like fossil fuel used. But a lot of R&D is carried out in this stage. Actually, the purpose of this development of the hydrogen technology is to reduce down the cost in this stage. Actually, we already proven the concept of the technology, like we can produce green hydrogen. We can store and deliver the green hydrogen to the utilization, and then we can use. We have the technology, but problem is not economic. Actually, it is very expensive to accept for our people. Actually, if we, the R&D in that sense, we have to wait to develop the R&D, develop the technology to reduce down enough for the people accept the cost. But it is not not enough now. But that is, I mean, it will take a lot of time for the hydrogen technology to be cheap enough to compete with the fossil fuel. That means the people have to, we have to accept we need more cost for the hydrogen. So when we meet this kind of requirement, that means the people think we have to pay more on the hydrogen technology or renewable energy. Then and then the trial of the R&D to develop the economical technology. And when we meet this acceptance and requirement, then we can solve this problem. So I think we have to invest a lot of R&D, and we have to develop the technology in the same time the people acceptance have to improve, enhance to realize this and complete this technology put together and then solve the climate crisis.
Thank you, Dr. Han. Technology surely has a major part to play. I truly believe personally it's not the only part. There is so much more that we need to do on communication, awareness raising, but also getting the right policies in place, and you have helped Korea to do that. And I'm wondering, actually, I know it's a bit unusual, but Marie-Therese Töni, we have had you already talking about the communities. For me, the communities are a testimony of how something can work in practice. So what about the role of the hydrogen communities, such as the Hydrogen Austrian cluster in these processes? We got that question from the audience. Do you know anything about that? Can you tell us a bit more about the Hydrogen Austria cluster? Have you had encounters already?
Yeah, actually, I think it's an initiative from the Ministry from Digitalization and Economics and the State of Tyrol. And I think they like to bundle and strengthen technological and economic competences in Austria with regard to hydrogen. So it's a community, but it's not the energy community I was mentioned before. We have from the Renewable Energy Directive to share and sell energy within this community. But I think it's a very good initiative, and it's good that we have it in Austria.
Can I actually ask you, let's pretend I'm interested to join such an energy community. What would it take to do so? Where can I find more information?
Mm-hmm. We have a coordination office installed in order to help the people who like to go into an energy community. And so I think this would be the first point to go there, and they can consult for the next steps.
Brilliant, thank you so much. Renate Christ, I'm curious, of course, also of your opinion. You have the IPCC view. For me, you are really the representative of IPCC that has gained tremendous prominence. The sixth report was given in summer now before COP26 and actually shook everyone and alerted everyone that exactly the points that you made, the 3 points, are the ones that we need to work on, that CO2 is a man-made problem. Now, we do have one question by one of our listeners who says, how can we help African countries to combat against air pollution and, for example, the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is also a part of the overall plight that comes along. Now, air pollution is very small, but I'd say, how can we help? How can we assist African countries? You spoke about loss and damages. Maybe you can elaborate on the responsibility that we do have as technologically savvy countries to assist others. Maybe you can elaborate on that a bit.
Well, I guess one has to distinguish between different needs of African countries. For instance, a cooperation with fossil fuel producing countries like South Africa or Nigeria must be on a different level than countries which are very vulnerable to climate change and least developed countries. So let me start with the first group, the fossil fuel producing countries. I think here, of course, technology cooperation is an important step, but I think it is also in the international community, it is this aspect of fairness and common responsibility. So where we must not get into this kind of colonial kind of mode to say, okay, that's good for you, but I mean, go ahead also with good example. So I think there are already good cooperations, in particular between northern countries and South Africa. I'm not so much aware with Nigeria, but yeah, one can look at that. And then the other way is, of course, assisting in adaptation and vulnerable communities and preparing for loss and damage, because even with the best adaptation in certain areas, we cannot avoid loss and damage. And that's where I said earlier, that's one of the big tasks for the upcoming COP or COPs, to really find a fair solution for these kind of incidents and non-avoidable loss and damage. And there, as I said, it cannot be charity. It cannot be, it really, we have to live up to our responsibility and at least tackle it in a manner of solidarity and common responsibility. So would be my answer about Africa.
And I sense that you have not seen your wishes fulfilled at COP26 when it comes to loss and damages. It is a step in the right direction, it is recognized, but definitely not enough money is actually made available. What do you think between now and the next COP would be needed to get the act on loss and damages right? Is it that NDCs need to be reformed and the NDCs need to step forward with including loss and damage obligations? Or what could be a mechanism? What would be conducive to see on loss and damages? Do we need a summit on loss and damages? What do we do until the next COP?
Well, the Glasgow Pact foresees an expert dialogue and foresees a number of steps of technical level until I think they give a time period of 2 years until they intend to reach a conclusion on loss and damage. And we have already the Santiago network and the Warsaw network about loss and damage. So there are a lot of fora already where work is going on. But I think it's on the one hand, it has to be seen in the context of adaptation, but seen as a different problem. So where we are not able to adapt, but it has to be seen in the context to say adapt to the way as much as possible to avoid loss and damage, but then this residual loss and damage, the unavoidable, has to be treated in a different way. And then, of course, the best way to reduce loss and damage is the maximum mitigation, what we can achieve. And the emphasis also in the Glasgow Pact is the critical coming decade, which by now is only 8 years long, and because end of 2030 is coming very, very soon.
Now, I do want to loop in you, Dr. Han, again, because obviously you are the representative of one specific technology for finding these solutions. What is Korea's plan on hydrogen, also turning to the external world? So for Korea, I know there is roadmaps in plan, like there is a lot of development happening. I think it is an economic branch that is of great interest to the Republic of Korea and the government. What is your take on how that technology would then be conducive for, let's say, the less developed world as well, that are not yet at the technological level necessarily that countries like Korea are? So what is the external vision that you would have, that you would like to see?
Actually, Korea has a very difficult status in energy field. Actually, we imported about 95% of our primary energy from abroad. Actually, we don't have enough resources. Actually, in addition, we don't have not very enough renewable resources like solar and wind, and those are major we have right now. But if we deploy a lot of renewable energy, it is not very enough to meet the demand of our future demand of our energy. So hydrogen technology is very important for Korea in this stage. Actually, the green hydrogen, as you know, is produced by the renewable energy. So we maybe if we have if we assume we have all the technology, then our renewable energy is not enough to produce whole hydrogen, the total amount of the hydrogen we need in Korea in the future. So we need to import the hydrogen out of country. So what we need in Korea is the hydrogen should be one of the item to trade and purchase, export and import in internationally. So we need to structure to hydrogen export-import system, and then we collaborate. The whole world, every country have to collaborate together to build up the hydrogen structure, hydrogen transport structure, and we have to share the technology to build up the international connection, international transportation. So we have to collaborate together, I think.
Thank you so much. And collaboration, I think, was also one of the common denominators that everyone talked about. We need to collaborate and communicate about the things. And this small virtual symposium is a contribution to that, to know a bit more about where Austria stands, where Korea stands, and what are commonalities in interest. Now, what we have seen at COP is that many countries have vouched for, we do want to become net zero. Carbon neutral, said some, and others said net zero. The EU has made massive commitments towards that. Austria has a massive commitment towards that. Now, one of the criticism at COP26 was, that's fine and fair that governmental leaders right now are announcing that, but in 4 or 8 years' time, they might not be in power. So how can we make sure that this commitment is one that is sustainable, that is one that is not just on paper, but actually implemented? And I would like to hear panelists. These have been critical voices from the ground. Our pledges are okay and commitments are fine, but how can we, you and I and our people in the audience, make sure that these commitments are observed? Do you have ideas? What can we contribute? What can we do? Anyone who is volunteering for this tricky question? Yeah, Marie-Therese Töni. Here you go.
Yes, I can try. Yes, I see the point. And I also think that Austria has a lot of strategies and laws in the pipeline to tackle climate change. But I think now it's high time to start implementing these, because the energy transition is one of the key factors for decarbonizing the economy. And I also believe that we cannot wait until we have COVID under control. We need to work on our climate goals in parallel and clearly need to work hard on getting other major economies also to increase their efforts and implement them in national laws.
Thank you so much. And speaking of national laws, Dr. Han, you have been co-developing, I guess, many of the policies in this regard. What's your take on this question?
It's not easy for me to answer this question. Yes, we need Korea government. Actually, our government tried to drive strongly forward to the decarbonization. But it is not free at all. We pay a lot of for the carbon neutrality, but the people does not people consider almost the carbon neutrality environment can be kept in free. So people don't think we have to pay a lot of thing for realize to achieve the carbon neutrality. So government also actually advertise or communicate to the people to think people it is expensive. Although it is expensive, we have to that is the direction we have to go. So I think we have to try to people convince for this crisis, and then the people have to convince. We have to make the people convince. It is the only way we have to go. So we have to pay, even though we have to pay more, we have to go this way. We have to people to make the people convinced.
Convince people step by step. Renate Christ, I do want to put the floor to you because you were someone who held governments accountable to their commitments and their pledges. So what is your take? What can we do from now on till the next COP beyond to hold governments accountable, to live up to the commitments?
Well, I think one, as you already mentioned, 2050, 2060, 27, that's the target dates for the various net zero commitments. It's a long time away and many elections away, but that's why it's so important to have the short-term NDCs, which should be aligned with the net zero targets. And that's also at least written in the Glasgow Pact. And I think that's very, very important to monitor whether countries are on track individually, but also collectively. So that's the kind of mechanical instrument or diplomatic instrument. And as I said earlier, there is a kind of international pressure building up by countries enhancing their commitments and then kind of mobilizing also stronger commitments from other countries. But where I put a lot of hopes is, on the one hand, business and industry, because when we have the clear target towards net zero, then business and industry will move towards that target and puts their investments and the money into the right technology. That's at least what I hope. And when we look at developments in the US, when the US dropped out of the Paris Agreement, we still had the movement of America's pledge, and we are still in, and industry and communities and big cities told the world, no, we are still fulfilling the pledges we made in Paris. So I think that's one of the, I would say, the power of business and industry, but also the power of people in the civil society to then say, okay, that's what we have promised. So let's keep on that track and don't deviate from that. So that's at least my hope. And I think business and industry and civil society, I think they are big powers.
You're so right. Business, definitely. Civil society, every individual is actually needed. We do have a comment by Joanna Kim, who says it would be interesting to see Usually, hydrogen policies are for a huge industry, such as generating electricity and applications in the car. And they are all talking cheap green, and I think that it is not directly related to people. So is there a policy to distribute hydrogen system for public, such as a general home? That I think if people know the needs and the usefulness of hydrogen, it is easy to make the public sentiment for it. So that's an interesting observation, that probably we need more communication on hydrogen policies and what it actually means for industry, what it means for a private person, and where we need to draw that line. And ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to almost the close of our virtual symposium. Time has flown by. And so I want to use the last 3 minutes for something called the lightning round, where I would ask each panelist to leave the audience with probably the 1 or 2 key sentences that you want the audience to retain from our interventions here. And I will start with you, Marie-Therese Töni, for your lightning for the audience. Please, over to you.
Thank you. I believe that enhanced deployment of renewable energy and increased energy efficiency in all sectors will contribute to achieving our energy and climate objectives. But we need to act as a global community, and we need to act fast.
Thank you so much. Brilliant. Lightning round, over to you, Dr. Han. What are the sentiments, what are the statements that you want to give to the audience to leave this current symposium with?
Actually, not only hydrogen, carbon neutrality, we have a lot of technology in the stage of developing. So, people, convince, have to I hope the people to convince it is really crisis, and then we need participate in this movement. So I think everybody participate in this movement.
Thank you so much, Dr. Han. And the final words of summary and messages go to Renate Christ. What you want the audience to leave with?
Well, we have talked now a lot about carbon dioxide and green economy and climate change, but I think we must not forget also other problems of global commons and planetary boundaries. And I think also we have to reflect on our lifestyle. And I just want to leave you with 2 figures. 10% of the global top earners are responsible for 50% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. And I think that should show us a little bit, we should not only focus on growth, but how can we achieve basic services and quality of life for all, or for the maximum number of people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful concluding remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to an end of this virtual symposium. I thank you for your attention. I thank you for your participation in the chat. And of course, special thanks to our honorary speakers and our panelists for engaging and interesting, insightful discussion on beyond COP26, green economy, and how we can possibly get there. Thank you so much, and hope to see you soon.